Okay, so in the previous video, um, you should have modified your schema and then updated some of your HTML code in order to change the appearance of your application. Now we are going to talk about a relatively new concept called routing. Routing is the URL scheme of your application. So in this case, we're looking at a certain cat. So the path is /cats/ whatever the ID of that cat is. So when you're just on the normal cats list, this page, then the URL is just /cats. So whenever you think of routing, think of this URL at the end of the localhost 3000. That is an address for a specific page of your application, right? So imagine that there's this like router in your program, and whenever someone loads, say localhost 3000 /cats, the router sees, oh, they want to go to the /cats page, and then it renders that page in your app. So to take a look at some routing code, first let's take a look at that list of cats page. So if you go under your pages, you're going to go into the cat collection pages, and then I have list cats page. So if we open up the JavaScript for that file, we'll see a couple different things. The first one is you have this line of navbar code. So the navbar code is exactly what it sounds like. It's a little built-in thing that I have for you in order to add things to the navbar, just like the cats is right here. So whenever you generate a new collection, I automatically add the list of cats to the navbar. So if we wanted to add something else to the navbar, we could go ahead and try this right now. We'll say navbar.add, say URL / whatever, menu name. This is whatever's going to show in the navbar, so we'll do whatever with a capital W. And then we will say menu orientation. In this case, why don't we say right? And now, if we go and wait for our program to refresh, you can now see we have the whatever link added up here at the right side of the menu bar. Now there's a problem though. It says, oh, oops, looks like there's no route on the client or the server for URL HTTP localhost / whatever. That's because we haven't set up a page that has the / whatever route. So we won't do that right now. We'll go back to that at a later point. But that was just to kind of give you a quick explanation of what this navbar line of code is doing. So it's just, this navbar is just a globally available object on the client where you can, easily add items and have them link automatically to certain pages up here in the navbar. And you can set the orientation to be left or right, which side you want it to go to. So I'll go ahead and delete that line of code. So now to learn about some of that routing code. So in this case, we're on the /cats page. So right here in your code base, you see how we have this router.route /cats. And then it's got a function here. And then it's saying this.render list cats page. Well, let's break that down a little bit. So what's happening is we're saying, hey, when someone tries to go to the /cats page, run this function. Now you might not have seen this pattern before. This pattern is called a callback. What does that mean exactly? Well, it typically means we are calling one method, right? So notice the highlighted parens right here. That's the first method we're calling, and it has two parameters. The first parameter is a URL for the route. The second parameter is a function that's inlined right here, right? And just to demonstrate that, I could pull that out into a variable called foo. Could just take that function whoops, what have I done? So I could take that function and then just pass foo in right here. So what a callback is it's a function that you can pass around. So one way to think about it is that, hold on 1 second, guys. Hey, Eric, I'm in the middle of the video. Okay, sorry, I'm just like, thanks. Sorry about that. Didn't want to restart the video and didn't want to have a bunch of chatter in the background. So what a callback is one way to think about it is it's just a string, right? So we have this var foo, and we basically have a string right here. We have as if it's like a string of code. It won't let me. The text editor is too smart to let me do what I'm trying to show, but you can just pretend as if this function, it's a string. And until we say foo with the parentheses on the end like that, it won't get invoked. So when I say invoked, I mean it won't be run, right? Let's try that one more time. We are taking a function, we're saving it in a variable. We can pass this variable around to another method call or function call, like a parameter, just like we are right here. We could run it arbitrarily at any point in time. We could have some sort of condition. We could be like if some condition, and then we could run foo. Basically, think of it as a way to save a function for later reuse. And in this case, what we are doing is we're saying, hey, when someone goes to the /cats page, we are now then going to run this function. So that's why there isn't any parentheses slapped on the end right here. Because we don't want it to immediately read this line of code and then try to run foo right away. We are saying, hey, here's a function I want you to run later on when this certain event occurs. For those of you guys that have actually been going to class, what you'll notice is, we talked about this before, but your program, really what happens when you start your Meteor app, it runs from beginning to end, and there's all these events that can occur. And every time you have one of these callback functions, you're basically saying, hey, when this event occurs while my app is running, then run a certain block of code. So I don't want to go too much deeper into that concept, but basically know that we are passing a function around. And so in this case, I've pulled the function out into its own variable, but how you'll probably see it written is inlined right in the parameter slot, because we don't really need to save this function in its own variable because we're only using it right in this spot. So all that's happening is there's two parameters here. There's the string and then this second parameter of a function where we're passing it to this router object, and we're saying, hey, do something with this function later on. And that thing we're going to do is going to show the list cats page template. So that's exactly what this says right here. It says when you go to /cats, render the list cats page. And so if we open up list cats page right here, you'll notice there's our template, list cats page. And that's what we're rendering on /cats. Then it's just the normal stuff you're used to. We have an if block right here where I'm basically saying, oh, if there are results, so if there's any cats at all in the collection, it'll only be false if it's 0. Has results will be true, and then if there are cats in the collection, we will show the sort buttons. If there aren't, we won't show them, right? So normal template helper stuff. So template.listcatspage.helpers, right? And same with those two buttons, newest first, oldest first. Those are just events that we're listening to right here. See, there's the click on the oldest first buttons and the click on the newest first, right? So all these different pieces of our app, we can still just do helpers and events and all the same code calls we have before, right? We have a couple new tools to make it easier for us so we don't have to write so much code by hand, but all the same stuff we could do before, we can still do right now. So that's basically what the URL scheme is doing. Now, the next thing we'll notice is if we click on one of these documents, the URL has changed. It's /cats, and then it has some sort of ID after that. Well, that's the ID of the current cat we're looking at. So one way to think about this is we have a page here where we show a single cat document on it. We don't want to have to custom program somehow. I mean, it wouldn't even really be possible to like hard code a HTML page for every single cat we have there, right? So we have a view one cats page here. So go ahead and open that up on the left. And that just describes how one cat looks, right, when we're on this page. I mean, we've covered this in a previous video, but what I'm trying to show you is that we created a template, a page that was flexible. You could feed it any of the documents in your collection, and it would display what that document looks like, right? So a way to think about this is that crazy ID in the URL scheme up there. That's a parameter to a function, right? So we can pass in different IDs in that part on our URL, and then we'll render different documents on this page, right? So this whole page is like a function, and we can pass in different values telling it which document we want to show. So to go ahead and show the code for doing that, so I'm opening the view1 catpage.js file. You should, yours will be view1 book or whatever your collection is called. So in here, now in that function that you pass, there's a couple additional lines of code. So the first thing here is this subscribe call. Don't worry about that currently. We will get to that in a later video. So just don't touch that right now. But here's the important part. Notice how we have this :_ID thing in here. What I'm basically saying is, hey, this part of the URL, it's dynamic, meaning it will change, right? As we know, that part of the URL, that second piece, which represents the ID of the document we are trying to show, that will be swapped out with different IDs. So that :_ID field right here, by putting a colon in front, we are effectively creating a parameter inside of our URL. And you could add more than one if you wanted to. We could say, /:, like my param. And now there would be another parameter in the second slot that would be dynamic, right? So I just called it _ID because that's what it refers to in this particular example. The reality is as long as you preface it with this colon, it can be whatever you want it to be. And so you'll notice right here when I say this.params._ID, that's me grabbing whatever value this is currently set to. So it's basically like, okay, let's trace the steps here again. So this page, you can actually look in the bottom left and you'll notice the link, right? This item in this list right here is linking to some cat document. So it's /cats/ some crazy ID. So when we click on that, that immediately triggers this block of router code because it sees we're going to /cats and then we're going to some wild string, right? So it runs this block of code. Then we call this.params._ID and it grabs the value right here in the URL off of it, and it's saved in this variable. Now we're going to use that ID to look up the cat that we want. So we're grabbing the _ID right here. So basically what this object is, and it's probably time that I explain this in more detail. When you say find one, you can, I guess this would actually, well, this is fine. Sorry. So what we are doing is we're just saying find the one cat with the current ID, right? And what I've done here is I've built a query object. So you can see there's an inline object right here. So I'm basically saying, give me the cat that has that matches these fields on it. In this case, the object only has the one field, underscore ID. You could add other fields on here too. You could also be like, where, give me the cat where the type was like friendly or something like that. So you could list, so it's like where it has this ID, and you can just give it basically different fields to query and stuff. I don't want to go too much into searching right now. So the reality is what kind of stumbled me on this is that you don't actually probably need this object with the underscore ID. You could just pass the ID right into find one, because find one will take that. It'll be happy with that. So basically we're saying cats.find one like we've done before, and then we're grabbing the ID off the URL and then passing that into the find one call. And now if we let our app refresh, it should continue to work the same as normal. Yeah. So you can delete that extraneous object if you don't want that, because it's not really necessary. Just to reiterate, I know this is a lot. So we went to a certain URL that had the ID of the cat in the URL right here. We grabbed that off, and then we passed it into cats.findOne and then looked up that cat. Now here's where it gets interesting. So you remember on that other page, we had this.render list cats page. That was great. That just showed us, our page, one of our page level templates. Well, now we want to do something a little more. Remember how we have this, this context? So when we were, if we go back to our collections folder, go to templates, and then look at find one cat. Remember here where we're saying this.title, this.body, this.numLives. Well, at some point we have to say, hey, which document are we setting equal to this, right? So when we're on this view one cat page, notice how we're just yielding in that template, the find one cat template. So if we don't specify it, it will automatically inherit the this keyword from whatever template it's being yielded inside of. And in this case, we set the this keyword with this line right here. So we're doing the normal this.render the view one cat page. And while we're at it, set the data context to that cat that we just looked up on our collection. One more time. Let's set the data context to the cat that we just found from that collection. So the data context is whatever document, or it could be really any object, but in this case it's a document, this keyword is set equal to. That's called the data context. And the way we do that inside of a router when we're going to a certain URL is we do we pass this object in, we say data, and then we give it whatever we want this keyword to be set equal to, right? So be careful here. This changes meaning depending upon where you are in your code. For example, this right here refers to some special router object that lets us do the magical router things we're doing. But now, once we have this data context set here, this keyword inside of the view one cat page has changed, right? So this keyword changes meaning depending upon where you are in your code base. And it's very easy to get tripped up on this. So whenever you use this keyword, there should be a little red flag that goes up in your mind saying, okay, do I actually understand what this is set equal to right now? And in the case of what we're doing right here, this is set equal to whatever document we're trying to show. So that's how the find list works, right? So if we go back to our find cats list, sorry, not that one, cat in find list. So we know that this template, cat in find list, gets repeated multiple times for each cat we have in the list. Let's go ahead and just add another cat just to demonstrate, that concept. Okay, so the cat in find list, that template is yielded in each time for each of these cats. So you'll notice that that template is really just one big A block. An A block is a linking block, meaning it has this special little attribute called href, and the href can link to another location inside of our app. So this should look familiar. Hey, it's /cats, and then we're yielding in whatever the ID is of the current cat in the list, right? So this one will have a different ID than this one does. And they will link to that page. So it'll be /cats / whatever the current ID is. So what happens is once we click on one of these, that's how we get to /cats / whichever ID of the cat is that we're trying to load, which triggers off all that other router code that we had written previously. So this is a pretty regular structure when you build your app. Because a lot of times you're like, well, I don't really know which of the documents to show my user. They need to pick a document. So it's pretty normal to have a list of documents, right? They'll scroll through them and then they end up picking one of them. And once they pick that document, then from there, you now have that unique ID. And so using that unique ID, then you know what data to load and what to display to the user, right? So a lot of programming is sort of this scavenger hunt where you first present your user with just a list of choices. Then after they pick something, it then links to another part of your app that gives them more fine-grained control. But you don't just start off by loading this page because you don't know what document they want to look at, right? They need to select that first before, so that you can know what ID and what data you're trying to show to them. So this is a little bit complicated, so definitely take a minute to play around with this functionality and look in the bottom left-hand corner. It's kind of hard to see with this recording, but if you look down there, you'll see a link for each of these items, and you can see the different IDs on them. And that should kind of give you an idea of how the different pieces of our app are tying together. So just to recap, kind of a lot of things with routing there. Routing, that is unique URLs to pages. And then a URL can have params like /cats /_ID, where the _ID is flexible. So it can have these generic params that can change, and then depending upon what that parameter is, you know what data to load. Because here's the magic of this URL. Once we've clicked on one of these, if I copy that URL and then I open a new incognito window and I paste it in, it knows exactly which document that we want to show, even though it's a totally fresh load of our app. It'll immediately parse that URL and then show the correct information. So it makes it really easy to share different components of your app with other users, that is, can share the URLs really easily. So a URL can have params, and then the last thing would be this is set to whatever data we are trying to show. So usually what will happen is we'll grab an ID off the URL, and then using that ID, we'll look up a document from a collection and set it equal to this keyword. So there's a lot to digest. So definitely take a minute to play around with this functionality, get all the relevant JavaScript and HTML pages open and make sure you know which page you're on at any given time, right? And understanding like, oh, this little chunk up here, that's in our side of our collections. That's one of those little reusable pieces. This is the find one cat that we're yielding in. But these two buttons down here, that's page level functionality. If we go look at the view one cat page, you'll see the edit and delete buttons are on that page, right? Because odds are you might want to show a cat document, for example, and not always have the edit and delete buttons come along with it, right? So the edit and delete buttons are specific to the current page we're on, so that's why they're inside of the view one cat page template. Whereas inside of the find one cat template, it only has things pertaining to showing the data on that cat. So take a minute to play around with this. Try to sketch it out, see how all the pieces link together, see how the URLs work. Take a look at these blocks right here. Play around with a little bit and try to make sure you have a really firm understanding of this concept.